The phone was not even hers. That was the thing she would come back to over and over in the weeks that followed. She had not gone looking. She had not unlocked it. She had not typed in his code or scrolled through his messages or done any of the things that women get accused of doing when marriages start to rot from the inside. She had simply reached into her clutch at her own baby shower, pulled out the wrong phone, and the screen had lit up on its own. One notification. One name. 3 sentences. And Naomi Kwon, 7 months pregnant, standing on a rooftop in Atlanta in a green dress with gold pins in her hair, felt her knees go before her mind had even finished reading. The phone slipped. Tamara caught her on the way down, not fully, not cleanly, but enough that she went sideways instead of straight, and the sound Tamara made when she felt her cousin's weight shift was the sound that cut through the music and the laughter and the clinking glasses and turned the entire rooftop into a different kind of place entirely. Call 911. Somebody call 911. Give her space, please. I need everyone to back up. Priya was already moving. Copper jumpsuit, heels she hadn't taken off all night, crossing the terrace like she hadn't worn heels at all. She dropped beside Naomi on her knees without hesitating, nurse's hands, nurse's eyes, checking pulse, checking airway, scanning the face of the woman she had known since they were both 22 years old and terrified and pretending they weren't. Naomi, look at me. Naomi's eyes were open. That was the thing that unsettled Priya most. She wasn't unconscious. She was present, technically, physically present, but she was looking at something that wasn't the string lights above her or Priya's face hovering 3 inches away. She was looking somewhere internal, somewhere that had just been rearranged. I hear you, Naomi said. Her voice was completely level. I'm okay, check the baby. I'm checking, don't move. Priya, check the baby. I am checking the baby, stay still. Priya's hands moved to her abdomen, gentle, practiced. Her face gave nothing away, which was its own kind of answer, no alarm crossing it, no tightening around the eyes. Any pain, cramping, sharp pressure? No. You're sure? I'm a nurse, Priya. You're also the patient right now, so let me work. The crowd pressed in. Priya didn't look up. I said back up, all of you now. They backed up. And then the glass doors opened, and Joon-ho came through them. He saw the configuration first, the circle of bodies, the stillness at the center, and something in him understood before his mind caught up, because he was running before he knew he had decided to run, shouldering through people with a gentleness that was still somehow urgent, saying, excuse me in the specific voice of a man who is trying very hard not to be afraid. He saw her on the ground, and the trying stopped. Naomi, he was beside her before anyone could stop him, one hand on her face, one hand finding hers. Jajia, what happened? Are you hurt, the baby? She fainted, Priya said. Flat, professional. Pulse is steady. We need to get her lying flat and get her to the hospital to check on the baby. Now. Yes, of course. Joon-ho. He was already reaching for her. Priya put a hand on his arm, not stopping him, redirecting him. Let me get her stable first. He sat back. His jaw was tight. His hands, both of them, were trembling slightly, and he pressed them flat against his knees so no one would see. Naomi, his voice dropped just for her. I'm here, look at me. She looked at him. And something passed behind her eyes, something he couldn't name, something that wasn't pain and wasn't fear and wasn't any expression he had seen on her face in 3 years of watching it. And then she looked away. He felt that look away like a door closing. He didn't know why. Not yet. Queens, if you are just finding this channel for the first time, welcome. You walked in at exactly the right moment. I need to know where you are watching from right now. Drop your city, your country, wherever you are in the world, because the women who find their way here always find it at the moment they need to. And if this story is already sitting heavy on your chest the way it is on mine, stay. Subscribe. Because what Naomi is about to find out in that hospital room is going to change everything you thought you understood about this marriage. And you need to be here for it. They admitted her quickly. Grady Memorial knew Naomi Kwon. She had walked these halls for years. And the triage was swift and efficient. And within the hour, she was in a room with a monitor attached and Mia Jisu's heartbeat filling the space with a sound so steady and so strong that Naomi closed her eyes the first time she heard it and kept them closed for a moment longer than necessary. The attending physician, Dr. Walsh, gray-haired, unhurried, reviewed the readings, asked her questions, and delivered her verdict with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times. Vasovagal syncope. Your blood pressure dropped suddenly. It happens in the 3rd trimester. The body responds to an acute shock, emotional or physical, by slowing the heart rate. Both you and the baby are stable. We'd like to keep you overnight for observation. Thank you, Naomi said. Dr. Walsh left. The room did what hospital rooms do when the professional has departed. It became very quiet and very honest and very difficult to be in. Joon-ho was in the chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, holding himself together with the particular stillness of a man who has decided that falling apart is not available to him right now. Priya stood at the window with her back to both of them. Naomi stared at the ceiling. The monitor beeped. Nobody spoke for almost a full minute. Then Naomi said his name. Joon-ho. He leaned forward immediately. Tell me what happened. You were fine and then. Your phone. A pause. Not long, 2 seconds, maybe 3. But the quality of that pause, the texture of it, the specific way his body responded to those 2 words, the thing that moved through his face that wasn't guilt and wasn't panic, but was something older and heavier than either of those things, Naomi felt all of it. She had spent 3 years learning his face. She was reading it right now. My phone, he said. You gave it to me to hold. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the wrong one, and there was a notification. She stopped. She did not look away from him. From someone called SY. The silence this time was different. Who is SY Joon-ho? He looked at her for a long moment. She watched something move through him, something she recognized as a man who has carried a weight for a very long time and has just been asked, finally, to set it down. Her name is Sena Yoo. Okay. We were together, in Seoul, before I came here, before I met you. How long? 2 years. And it ended. We ended. I left for Atlanta 8 months after we broke up. I haven't spoken to her in 4 years. Naomi breathed in slowly through her nose. The message said the baby might be yours. I know. Joon-ho. I know what it said, Naomi, and I need to explain. Then explain. He did. He told her about Sena the way a man tells the truth when the truth is the only thing left available to him. Plainly, without performance, without the careful editing that comes from wanting to protect yourself or the other person. He told her about Seoul, about being 28 and ambitious, and certain he understood love because he'd never had it tested. He told her about the relationship ending because of geography and distance and 2 people who wanted different things and handled that poorly. He told her he had left. He had not heard from Sena since. The message said might, Naomi said. Yes. Which means she's not certain. Yes. Which means there was someone else during that time, or after. That is what I understand from the message. I don't know the full situation. I only know what you read. Naomi was quiet. The monitor beeped. Mia Jisu's heartbeat filled the silence like something patient and permanent. Why didn't you tell me she existed? The shift on his face was immediate and precise. This question hit differently. This was the wound underneath the wound, not the message, not Sena, not the possibility of a child. This was the choice he had made, quietly, years ago, to leave a piece of his history folded away where she would never find it. Naomi. Not the baby, not the message, her. Why didn't I know she existed? Because it was over, because it felt. He stopped, started again. I told myself it wasn't relevant, that what we had was new and clean and I didn't want to bring something painful into it. You decided what I needed to know. I was wrong. You decided. Her voice was very controlled. That was the thing about Naomi when she was most serious. She got quieter, not louder. Without asking me what my husband's history was allowed to include. He didn't have a counter to that, because she was right. I was wrong, he said again. I was wrong to protect you from it. You didn't need protection. You needed honesty. From the window, Priya moved. Not dramatically, just shifted. And the sound of it, the small involuntary movement of a woman who has been holding very still, because she knows what is coming next and has been dreading it, made Naomi's eyes move from her husband's face to her best friend's back. Priya. Nothing. Priya, turn around. Priya turned around. Her arms were crossed over her chest. Her eyes, usually so direct, so certain, were fixed somewhere between Naomi's face and the floor. She looked like someone who had been rehearsing a moment for months and had now arrived at it and found the rehearsal completely insufficient. What did you do? The question was quiet. Which was the most frightening version of it? Priya uncrossed her arms, crossed them again. Her jaw moved. I found her, she said. Queens tap that like button right now, because what Priya is about to say is the thing that reframes this entire night. Naomi didn't just stumble into this by accident. Someone she trusted, someone who has known her since they were 22, someone who planned every flower at that baby shower. She is the reason that phone lit up tonight. Tell me in the comments, do you think what Priya did was an act of love or an act of betrayal? Because this comment section is about to be split straight down the middle, and I need to know where you stand before this story gives you the answer. You found her. I was doing research, after you and Joon-ho got engaged. Priya's voice was steady, but the steadiness cost her something. I always do. You know I always do when you get serious about someone, I look. Because you are my person and I need to know you're safe. Priya. I found Sena Yoo, found that they'd been together 2 years in Seoul, found that she'd relocated to New York about a year after you got married. A pause. I reached out to her, 6 months ago. I told her who I was. I told her Joon-ho was married, that his wife was pregnant, and I asked her if there was anything about their relationship that you had the right to know. The room was completely still. Joon-ho had gone very quiet. Not the quiet of a man who was angry, the quiet of a man watching his wife absorb something that he had no way to soften. 6 months ago, Naomi said. She didn't respond immediately. It took months. And when she did, when she told me there might be a child, tonight was already planned. Everything was already booked. And I didn't know what to do. Priya's voice cracked precisely once on that last word. I thought it was better for her to contact him directly, so I gave her his number. I told myself that if something was going to surface, it was better now than later, before the baby, while there was still time to. To what? Priya stopped. To what, Priya? To what? Give me time to leave. Give me an exit before I got in too deep. Naomi's voice was still quiet, still steady, but there was something underneath the steadiness now that had an edge. I have a 7-month-old daughter in my body. I have been in this marriage for 3 years. You thought you were giving me time. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. A pause. From the guilt of knowing something and not saying it. Priya didn't deny it. And that, the not denying, was its own answer. I'm sorry. Priya's eyes were bright, controlled, barely. Naomi, I am so sorry. I was trying to protect you and instead I landed us here. And I know that. I know exactly what I did. Naomi looked at her best friend for a long time. Then she looked at her husband. Then she looked at the ceiling. I need everyone to give me a minute. Joon-ho stood immediately. Of course. Naomi, Priya started. A minute, Priya. They left, the door closed. And Naomi Kwon lay in a hospital bed with her hands on her belly, and the sound of her daughter's heartbeat in the room, and the city outside the window, and 3 years of a marriage she had chosen deliberately. Eyes open, heart forward, and she made herself sort through it the way she sorted through difficult diagnoses. Facts first, feelings second, decision last. Fact, he had a life before her. That was not a crime. Fact, he had hidden part of that life. That was a choice. A choice with a meaning she would need to excavate with him properly, in a real space, not this one. Fact, he had not been unfaithful. The word was might. Might meant uncertainty. Might meant a timeline Sena herself could not precisely account for. Fact, he had told her the truth tonight. Sitting in that chair with his hands open on his knees, he had told her the truth. Fact, Priya had acted from love. Misguided love, arrogant love, love that decided it knew better, but love. Fact, Naomi was 31 years old, and she had made her own choices, and she did not need to be investigated on her behalf. She put both hands flat on her belly. Mia Jisoo rolled, slow, certain, unbothered. What do I want? The answer arrived simply, without drama. She wanted her husband. She wanted to go home. She wanted to sit across from the man she had chosen and know him more completely than she had before tonight, which meant knowing the painful parts, the closed-away parts, the parts he had tried to spare her from because he thought sparing was the same as caring. She pressed the call button. When the nurse came, she asked for water. Then she asked her to send in her husband. Only her husband. When Joon-ho came back through the door and saw her face, saw what her face was doing, the particular configuration of it, the decision that had settled into it, he stopped just inside the threshold. Sit down, she said. He sat. She looked at him for a moment. Tell me about her, she said. Not the message, not the situation. Tell me who she was to you. Something moved through him. He was checking, she knew, whether she was certain. When he saw she was, he nodded, and he began. He told her about meeting Sena in graduate school, about Seoul in their 20s, the ambition, the electricity of a city full of people becoming who they were going to be. He told her Sena was funny and sharp and profoundly creative, and that he had loved her the way young men love when they don't yet know the full geography of their own hearts. He told her about the ending, not a betrayal, not a catastrophe, just two people whose paths were going in different directions, and who had handled that truth with avoidance instead of honesty. When I left, he said, I felt like I had closed a chapter, not happily, but completely. And then you met me. And then I met you. A pause. A small, involuntary thing crossed his face, the ghost of the smile he'd worn that night. You were standing at the window at the gala, and you looked like you were having a private conversation with the city, like you were entirely inside your own world and entirely comfortable there. He paused. I had not seen that before, not in quite that way. You told me I was the view, she said. You were, simple, no qualification. She held his eyes. You should have told me about her. Yes. Not because it would have changed anything. Because I am your wife and our life is shared. And I want the parts that are hard as much as the parts that are easy. I know, he said. I was raised to carry the resolved things alone, to not bring closed pain into something new. I thought I was protecting you. I was actually just protecting the version of myself that didn't have to explain. He looked down at his hands. I am still learning that the way you do things is better, that sharing is not burden, that it is, in fact, the opposite. Naomi reached across and put her hand over his. We are going to contact Sena, she said. Together, we are going to find out the truth, and whatever the truth is, we face it together. That is what we do. She held his gaze. But Joon-ho, this is the last room I am not allowed into. You understand me. From here, whatever you are carrying, I carry it with you. He turned his hand over and held hers. His eyes dark, serious, hers to read, filled with something she had no clinical term for. It was love, in its most stripped-back, unperformed form. I understand, he said. I promise. 3 days later, Naomi went to Priya's apartment. Alone, on purpose. On a Sunday afternoon when Priya had clearly been cooking since morning, the smell of jollof rice reached the hallway before the door opened, which was how Priya processed guilt and grief, and the specific terror of having damaged something she could not afford to lose. Priya opened the door. They looked at each other for a moment. Come in, Priya said. They sat at the kitchen table. The food was on the stove. Neither of them mentioned it. You investigated my husband, Naomi said. Without telling me. Yes. You decided I needed to be protected from information. I was capable of handling myself. Yes. You found something real. And instead of coming to me, instead of sitting at this table and telling me what you'd found, you went around me. You made yourself the gatekeeper of my own marriage. Priya's jaw was tight. Her eyes were dry, and the effort of keeping them dry was visible. Yes, she said. Why? A long pause. Because I was scared, Priya said. Not for you, for me. She looked up. I was scared that if I came to you and told you what I'd found, you would stay anyway. And then if something happened, if it turned out there was a child and the marriage cracked and you were hurt, I would have known and said nothing. I couldn't carry that. So I went around you and I made myself feel like I was doing something proactive when what I was actually doing was controlling it. Yes. Because if you controlled it, whatever happened next wasn't your fault. Priya didn't answer. Which was the answer? Priya, Naomi's voice was even. Not warm yet, but not cold either, the voice of a woman walking towards something carefully. I am not losing you over this. You are my oldest friend and I love you and that does not change. But you have to trust me. My choices, my life, my husband. You trust me to know what I need and to make my own decisions. That is the boundary. That is the thing that cannot happen again. Priya breathed out slowly. I trust you, she said. I always have. I forgot to act like it. Then remember. A pause. I'm sorry, Naomi. I know you are. They sat for another moment. Then Naomi said, Is the rice done? Priya looked at the stove, then back at her. It's been done for 2 hours. Then serve me a plate, because I am hungry and your jollof rice is the only good thing about this week. Something broke open on Priya's face, relief and love, and the specific gratitude of being let back in. And she stood up and went to the stove and neither of them said anything else about it, because some things don't need a formal closing. They just need someone to pick up the spoon. They called Sena Yoo on a Tuesday afternoon. Naomi and Joon-ho, side by side on the couch, phone on the cushion between them on speaker. His hand in hers, both of them still. 4 rings. Joon-ho. Her voice was careful, braced. Sena, his voice was steady. I'm calling with my wife, Naomi. She knows everything. I want you to know that before we speak. A pause. Okay, Sena said. Another pause. Hello, Naomi. Hello, Sena. What followed was 40 minutes that Naomi would not fully process until much later, sitting with it in pieces, the way you process something that is too large to take in whole. Sena told them she had discovered the pregnancy 8 weeks after Joon-ho left for Atlanta. She had been, during that same period, seeing someone else, an overlap she admitted to quietly, without dressing it up or excusing it. She had not known whose child it was. She had made the decision alone to have the baby and raise him herself in Seoul with her mother's help. Her son was 3 years old. His name was Hyun. He looked, she said, very much like Joon-ho. But resemblance was not confirmation. A therapist, patient, persistent, present across 2 years of Sena not being ready, had finally helped her understand that Hyun would one day ask the question she'd been avoiding. And he deserved an actual answer, not a silence she dressed up as protection. She was not asking for money, not asking Joon-ho to enter the child's life in any particular way if the result was not what it might be. She was asking only for truth. When she finished, the line was quiet for a moment. I'll do the test, Joon-ho said. Of course I will. Whatever the answer is, it is the right thing to know. Thank you, Sena said. A pause. Naomi. Yes. I am sorry for the way this landed on you, for all of it. My choices, they were never meant to reach you, but they did, and I'm sorry. Naomi breathed in. She thought about what she had decided in that hospital room. She thought about Sena, alone in Seoul, with a 3-year-old and a question that had no good moment to ask. She thought about the word might, and everything that word contained, and the courage it must have taken to finally say it out loud. Sena, she said, you made decisions with what you had. You were alone and you were scared and you did what you thought was right for your son. I'm not going to judge you for that. A pause. I'm glad you reached out. I know it wasn't easy. The silence on the other end of the line was the sound of a woman exhaling something she had been holding for a very long time. The test took 3 weeks. Life did not pause for 3 weeks to accommodate the waiting. Life continued the way it always does, Naomi's final trimester, advancing with its particular urgency, prenatal appointments and nursery preparations, and the ongoing project of assembling the crib that Joon-ho had been working on for 2 evenings, with the focused intensity of a man who needed something physical and controllable to do with his hands. Naomi stood in the nursery doorway one night around 11 and watched him work, the instructions spread on the floor beside him, the Allen key in his hand, his reading glasses on, his brow slightly furrowed, and felt something she did not immediately have a word for. It arrived eventually. Certainty. Not the certainty that everything would be fine. She didn't know that yet. The certainty that this was the man she had chosen. This specific man, with his quiet hands and his closed rooms and his imperfect honesty, and his reading glasses and his barley tea, and the way he said her name in the dark when he thought she was asleep, just to himself, like a private confirmation that she was real and present and his. She went to bed without telling him she'd been watching. He came in 20 minutes later and lay down beside her, and found her hand under the blanket and held it without saying anything. She let him. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning. Joon-ho was at his desk. Naomi was in the living room with a book she had been failing to read for 40 minutes. The same page, the same paragraph, the same first line, over and over. She heard his chair move. She heard his footsteps, their particular rhythm, unhurried, deliberate, cross the apartment toward her. She put the book down. He stood in the doorway. She read his face. What she saw was complex. It was not simple relief and not simple joy. It was the face of a man absorbing a truth large enough to require multiple sittings. And underneath the absorption, underneath the processing, something tender and aching for a boy in Seoul named Hyun who was 3 years old and looked very much like the man standing in this doorway, and had a mother who loved him and no father who knew him. He's not mine, Joon-ho said. The exhale that moved through Naomi was 3 weeks long. He's not mine, he said again, testing it, turning it over. He crossed the room and sat beside her, and she put her arm around him, and he leaned into her, the rare, careful way he allowed himself to be held, and she held him for a while without speaking. Are you okay? She said eventually. I think so. A pause. I feel relieved, and I feel something else for him, for Hyun. He was quiet for a moment. He still doesn't have a father. The result doesn't change that. No, she said gently, but that's not your weight to carry. I know, he pressed his lips to her temple. I know. Mia Jisoo arrived on a Saturday morning in late November. She arrived quickly and without ceremony, and with the full-throated fury of someone who has an opinion about being born that she intends to make known immediately. 6 hours of labor, efficient, decisive, and then she was there, placed in Naomi's arms, pink and furious and already entirely herself. Joon-ho stood at Naomi's shoulder. He looked at his daughter for the first time with an expression that Naomi would spend years trying to find adequate language for. It was the face of a man who has just understood something about the world that he had always believed theoretically, but had never until this moment actually known. Not in his mind, in his chest, in the specific place where knowledge becomes real. He didn't speak for a long moment. When he did, it was in Korean, quiet just for Mia. Mia. Wangnyunim. Little princess, hello. Mia Jisoo blinked at him, the unfocused, ancient gravity of the newborn. Then she closed her eyes. She knows your voice, Naomi said. She's been hearing it for months. She knows exactly who you are. He reached out one finger. Mia's hand, impossibly small, impossibly perfect, found it and closed around it with the complete and reflexive trust of someone who has never yet had a reason not to trust. Joon-ho made a sound in the back of his throat that was not quite crying. Naomi looked at him, this man, her husband, this specific and imperfect and chosen person, and she thought, there it is. That is the view. 4 months later, their apartment in Inman Park had reorganized itself around the fact of Mia Jisoo the way galaxies reorganize around a center of gravity. The nursery was warm yellow. Korean and English books sat side by side on the shelf. The mobile above the crib turned slowly in the dark, casting small shadows across the ceiling. On a night in late March, when the city outside had gone quiet and the baby had finally gone to sleep, Naomi stood at the window with a cup of barley tea she had learned to make herself and the particular stillness of a woman who is thinking. She heard his footsteps. He stood beside her. She's asleep. Finally, a pause. She has your determination. She was committed to being awake. Naomi smiled. They stood looking at the city. Atlanta doing what it does at midnight, poolsing, never entirely still. The lights of the skyline doing what they always do, which is exactly what they did the first night she saw them, at a gala 4 years ago, standing at a window, when a man she did not yet know appeared beside her and told her the view was better from where she was standing. "Do you know what I thought when you said that?" she said. He looked at her. "I thought this person is either going to be very important to me, or I am about to be very embarrassed." And I wasn't embarrassed. He laughed, a quiet, real, entirely unperformed laugh. The kind he saved for moments when nothing needed to be managed, when it was just the two of them and the night and the city outside the glass. "I would have been devastated," he said, "if you had been." She leaned into him. He put his arm around her. They stood at the window together, this man and this woman and the city that had held them since the beginning. And somewhere behind them, in a yellow room, Mia Jisoo Kwon slept the sleep of a child who has arrived into a world that was complicated and cracked and rebuilt before she got there, and is now, in all the ways that matter, ready. The between of two heartbeats is not silence. It is where the next beat is made. Queens stay in this feeling for just one more moment, because Naomi read 3 sentences on a phone that wasn't even hers, and she collapsed, and she woke up in a hospital room with her husband on one side and her best friend holding a secret on the other, and she could have burned it all down. She had every reason to. But she chose something harder than burning. She chose to go in, to ask the real questions, to stay in the room even when the room was painful. And I need to know, leave it in the comments right now, do you think Naomi was right to forgive Priya? Because some of you are going to say that what Priya did came from love, and love deserves grace. And some of you are going to say that no amount of love gives you the right to go around your best friend's back and hand a stranger her husband's number. I genuinely want to know where you land. And if this story held you from the first second to the last, subscribe. Because the women who find this channel stay here, and there is a reason for that. This is built for you. Share this with a woman who needs to hear it today, not because of the numbers, but because somebody in your life is sitting with a heavy thing right now, and this story might be the thing that helps her breathe. Queens, until the next one.